Most people spend years planning for retirement, but very few have thought about what the first 12 months actually feel like once you get there. Because the first year isn't just a financial transition, it's a personal one. And some of the things that catch people off guard have nothing to do with their super balance. So let me walk you through what I actually see happen in the first year and what's worth knowing before you get there. This is something I see quite consistently in practice. People arrive at retirement in a genuinely strong position. Good balance, no debt, ready to go. And then something unexpected happens. Not financially, just differently to how they imagined it. The first thing most people notice is that retirement doesn't feel the way they thought it would. And I want to be careful here, because this isn't about regret or disappointment. It's about adjustment. For most of your working life, your days had structure. You knew where you needed to be. You had deadlines. You had rhythm. And then one day, that stops. And for a lot of people, that's more disorientating than they expected. Not because anything is wrong, just because identity, routine, and purpose were more connected to work than they realized. This is one of those things that almost never comes up in financial planning conversations. And it probably should. Because how you feel in the first year directly affects the financial decisions you make. Someone who feels unsettled tends to underspend. They hold back, they delay decisions. They wait for a certainty that doesn't really arrive. And ironically, the people who plan most carefully are sometimes the ones who struggle most with this, because they've spent so long focused on the destination, that they haven't thought much about what life looks like when they get there. The second thing that catches people off guard is spending. Not overspending, the opposite. Most people expect to spend less in retirement, and for some people, in some phases, that's true. But in the first year, spending often goes up. You've got more time, you travel more, you do the things you kept putting off. And that's not a problem. That's retirement working as it should. But if your plan was built on a lower spending assumption, the first year can feel financially uncomfortable, even when everything is actually fine. I had a client recently who had retired in genuinely good shape. Solid super balance, mortgage gone, plan in place. In the first 12 months, they took the overseas trip they'd been planning for a decade, helped one of their kids with a deposit, did some work on the house. All of it was planned for. All of it was affordable. But watching the balance come down in that first year felt deeply uncomfortable. Even though nothing had gone wrong, because for the first time in their adult life, the number was moving in the wrong direction. And that psychological shift is something almost nobody prepares for. This is where it becomes important, because the financial plan and the emotional experience of retirement don't always move together. Your plan might say you can spend $90,000 this year, but if watching that money leaves feels wrong, you'll spend $70,000. And then you'll sit on $20,000 of unused retirement, wondering why it doesn't feel the way you expected. The third thing is the income shift. When you're working, money arrives. It lands in your account, you spend what you need. The rest builds. In retirement, you become responsible for paying yourself. And that sounds simple. But the first time you transfer $7,000 from your super to pay for a month of living, it feels different. Even when you understand the plan completely, even when the numbers work, there's a psychological weight to drawing down that nobody really warns you about. And this is worth saying clearly. That feeling isn't a sign something is wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something new, something you've never done before. And like most new things, it gets easier. But it gets easier faster when you understand it's coming. The fourth thing is decision fatigue. When you're working, a lot of financial decisions happen automatically. Super contributions come out of your pay. Expenses follow a predictable pattern. The structure of work creates the structure of spending. In retirement, the structure disappears. And suddenly, there are more decisions. Do I draw from super this month or use savings? Do I sell some investments or hold? Is now the right time to help the kids? Take that trip? Do that renovation? None of those decisions are complicated on their own. But making them for the first time without the rhythm of work behind you can feel heavier than expected. This is also where sequence risk becomes real, in a way that's different to reading about it. Sequence risk simply means that poor investment returns early in retirement can have a lasting impact on how long your money lasts. If markets fall in your first year and you're drawing income at the same time, you're selling assets at a lower value. That's not just a theoretical concern, it's something that can happen to anyone in their first 12 months. And having a buffer, a cash reserve that covers a year or two of spending, means you don't have to sell investments when markets are down. That buffer is one of the most practical things you can put in place before you retire. So what does this all mean practically? A few things worth thinking about before you get there. First, understand your spending properly before you retire, not a rough guess. Go back through 12 months of actual bank statements and build a real picture. Include a big one-off expenses you've been planning, the trip, the renovation, helping the kids. Because those aren't surprises, they're just not always in the plan. Second, think about psychological side as seriously as the financial side. Talk to your partner if you have one. Think about what your days will actually look like. What gives you structure? What gives you purpose? Because the emotional adjustment of retirement is just as real as the financial one. Third, build the cash buffer before you need it. 1 or 2 years of living expenses sitting somewhere accessible. Not because you expect markets to fall, but because having that buffer means your investment decisions don't have to be driven by short-term pressure. And finally, give yourself permission to spend. This one sounds obvious, but in practice, it's one of the hardest adjustments people make. You've spent decades building this, the whole point was to use it. And a clear income plan, knowing exactly where your money is coming from, how much is sustainable, and why the structure makes sense, is what makes that permission feel real. Not reckless, just right. This is general in nature, so it's important to consider your own situation, because everyone's first year looks a little different, but the patterns I've described show up consistently, and understanding them before you get there makes the first year a lot smoother. If you're approaching retirement and want structured guidance rather than figuring this out alone, I work with Australians in exactly that position. You can find details below.